I'm Simon, managing partner at Much Consulting, and I'm very happy you're all here today. I brought a few topics for you today. First of all, I want to touch a little bit on what processes in general AI is useful for. We actually handed in about 11 different AI talks, and we got this one, so this is the one you're going to have to see. But I think there's a lot of other applications as well. Secondly, we're going to have a quick check in the challenges in recruiting and why this is such a good place to apply AI. And then we're going to look in the details of the process, and in the end, obviously, how we're going to implement this in Odoo. I actually, just for you, changed the slides to include Odoo 19 AIs just after the keynote today. So I will also talk a little bit about this, trying out this process. All right. So, yeah, as said, I'm a managing partner at Much Consulting. We're one of the larger Odoo partners in Europe with about 85 people, majority consultants, and we do a lot of different stuff. If you're curious, go on our website and check it out. Before I start, you have the chance on the right-hand side to ask questions, and on the left-hand side, if you're curious to get the slides and some extra information afterwards, just scan the other code and just fill it out. I think this is talk number 12 on the form. Yeah, then you will get all the information, and you don't have to make so many pictures during the presentation. All right, so let's get started. What do we use generative AI for? So generative AI is always really good if you have a text-heavy process, because this really creates very instant ROI. And there's really three pillars for this use case today. The first one is generative AI, and I think right now, if anyone's speaking about AI, it's always generative AI and not one of the other forms. It's really, really good in reading and writing text and understanding the context, in comparing and summarizing, and in generating ideas. So as soon as you have this really text-based approach, this is really where AI comes in really, really strongly. Lastly, it's very, very good for repetitive tasks, because if you can describe your tasks in human language, the AI will be able to do your task as well. And this then allows us to have a very high precision. And it's probably the number one issue we see, that people apply generative AI in use cases where it doesn't perform well and then get sad and don't use AI, which I think is the wrong idea here. That's exactly why we are really trying a lot of different use cases to move a little bit away from the hype and see what really works with a high reliability in an enterprise setting. We want to see real workflows. We want to do small steps as much as possible. You might have seen this in one of our other talks today as well. Because automating these small steps, step after step, building these small agents, is really the best way to approach it and break down a problem. And we want to be sure there's real ROI. We have seen a few use cases that are extremely compute heavy. You need thousands of tokens. And for these kind of use cases, it's not great because the precision is not so good, because you have a lot of information. And at the same time, the ROI is often not there in the end. Last but not least, you should look out for governance and compliance. We're going to talk about this a little bit later. As you know, applicants are quite sensitive data, especially in Europe. So this is also a topic to keep in mind. So now coming to our use case. The recruiting use case really, for me, is one of the best examples, and I think it was the second process that we actually did both with clients and internally, where we're using AI. The reason is it's very, very text-based. I'm also pretty sure all the applicants are using AI now, so I think it's also important to be on the same level here. Scoring and a lot of the hiring activities, they're really, really repetitive, and that takes up the most of the time of the recruiters. And if you look at the whole process, we're going to see that in a moment, reviewing CVs and scoring them and sometimes sorting them is a lot of work. The last point here that often gets forgotten is that it's also a place with a lot of bias. So if you're interested in hiring the best people, you want to probably eliminate bias as much as possible from your recruiting process. And an AI with a very cold temperature setting that has very low creativity is also going to have less bias than humans. You probably all read the news headlines on the opposite, but I think we're going to look into this later a little bit again, but it's really, AI will definitely reduce bias on these kind of early processes, especially if you don't give it old CVs for learning, but you just use generative AI straight with prompts. All right, so let's have a quick look at this recruiting use case in detail. So I did a lot of research, and there's a lot of different numbers, but especially if you're hiring a little bit more ambitious roles like consultants or engineers, or any type of specialized role, you're going to have a lot of applications per hire. On average, it's about 150 to 250, and most recruiters to not only read the CV, that can take only up to 7 seconds on the experienced recruiters, but to actually process it, to make the decision, to click the right buttons, to trigger the next step, takes about 2 minutes. So you can imagine for any hire, you have about 500 minutes of time the recruiter needs on this first screening step to process any CV. And the second point that's really important is the time lag is very high. So on average, it takes about 3 weeks to get a reply. This is now from a German study. I couldn't find a good international measure, but it takes an average of 3 weeks until companies reply to an application. And especially higher paying jobs actually reply slower somehow. So if you hire experts, for example, it's very, very beneficial to react as quickly as possible. And throughout the whole application process, about 25% of the qualified candidates, so only the ones you select after the first screening, they actually drop out because they signed a different offer or they got too bored of you and were like, oh God, if this takes 6 weeks, I don't want to see how long it takes to be able to get a new computer in this company, right? So it also really reflects on who you are and what you do. Thirdly, at least 22% of the time that recruiters spend is spent on this screening and reviewing candidate process. So your recruiters find a lot of extra time to do other activities if they can cut the screening time. And from the recruiters in our company and from our customers, I can tell you it's also the least enjoyable part of the job. Most recruiters, they love talking to people, getting to know them, finding out more about them, really finding perfect candidates on LinkedIn maybe, but nobody loves reading 700 CVs in a day. So it's not only a lot of time, it also makes your recruiters very unhappy. And then, and this is, I think, quite interesting, even though a lot of the AI systems that were used a few years ago that were reviewing CVs based on similarity to old CVs, they introduced a lot of bias. But if you're using generative AI, so you do not actually use your old CVs as benchmark, you can actually reduce bias by 41%, and the same study also found that the quality is actually higher. So first learning here, use generative AI, don't build like some kind of prediction model based on your old applications. It actually performs worth both on bias and also on quality. Okay, let's have a quick look how we are implementing this in Odoo. So let's have a quick look at the process first. Probably there's 2 ways how you get your applications if you're using Odoo. The first one is by mail. The last one is probably, the second one is by the web form. We do actually integrate with all the different job portals as well. So we have a lot of clients that are also connected to LinkedIn, for example, so applications come in directly from this. But in the native Odoo way, it's these 2. And then in Odoo, there's an applicant created. You have attachments, right? And you have the job profile itself. We tend to set it up in a way that every application automatically goes to the right job, so we can avoid sorting them. But actually AI is also very good at that, so that's a problem you can solve very easily if you only have one email address set up right now. And then the next step that we probably want to do in this AI process, a few minutes after it's created, so all the files are properly uploaded, Odoo has done all the things it wanted to do in the first place. So we work here with a 5-minute delay. We want to hand over a prompt and all the context with the application information, all the files they send, and this job profile we have, right? We want to hand that over to the AI, and now for the European process, we want to print this somewhere in the summary field so a human can look at this. And the first question I always get is, oh, how expensive is this? And it's actually extremely cheap. So the average application we process like this takes about 3,000 tokens. It's less than $1 in cost on the API. So if you compare this, it's very, very low. And the second question, especially in Germany where people are very environmental conscious, we get is, oh, is this not like bad for the environment? And actually a human breathing for the 2 minutes of reviewing the application takes about 16 grams of CO2. And the AI, this is only interference, not training. I know the bad part is the training part, but that's only 6 grams of CO2. So it's roughly 3 times more efficient than a human breathing, just breathing, nothing else, no food, no nothing, on the environmental side. So I think, especially this interference part, it doesn't have a very large environmental footprint that you need to be concerned about. Now, in this process, especially in the EU, we work with the human-in-the-loop approach. So we summarize everything, the AI gives a clear recommendation, but a human needs to click the button. That's based on the EU AI Act. and also safeguards against a lot of other things. So for example, in Germany, we have a very comprehensive law about discrimination. And the most likely reason why an employer gets sued in the recruiting process is actually because you get sued for discrimination. To also avoid this, because it's very hard that an AI doesn't discriminate, it is objectively less biased, but legally it's very hard to prove that that's the case. That's why for all our EU customers, we actually work with this human-in-the-loop approach, where a human sees the result, clicks the button, and is done, and the next step continues here, right? Now, for our more international listeners, you don't really need a human in the loop. You can directly update the status in the recruiting app. In our case, we set up the recruiting always that then the next the next stage is the first interview, right? And it will then automatically trigger an email where people can sign up for their interview. So in this case, we can just move people forward. No recruiter ever has to look at that. That's obviously the more desirable outcome, in my opinion, but we have to be compliant as well. So what do we need to build this in Odoo? It's very easy. We need prompts, so we need to manage them, and we need to inject variables. We need the ability to run this automatically in the background or on a button click, but preferably in this case, definitely in the background. We need to be able to send this to the AI with all the fields in Odoo, with all the context as much as possible. And that's really also the tough part. We need to get all the attachments over as well. Now, as you probably know, Odoo has this kind of thing for templating, right? I think that's an Odoo 18 or 17 screenshot, but Odoo knows how templating works. So out of the box, copying the same style of editor as the email template, and it's used in many places in Odoo. Templates for prompts where we can inject stuff, trivial. Secondly, okay, we want to run things automatically. We can use an automation rule, or if we like a button, we can use a server action. We have an instant button in Odoo to click to run our AI. Beautiful, also solved. To actually send stuff to AI already in the last two Odoo versions, you probably know the /ChatGPT. I think it's now in Odoo 19 replaced with /AI. You can use this everywhere. Now the tricky part really comes on the last things. How do you do the context? So what happens if you want to use this in a later stage in the application where you have a lot of material, right? You want to have a final assessment and summary. You would probably need the chatter, all the notes people made. How does that work in the beginning with the attachments? That's a little bit more tricky. And how does it work if I need related data and other use cases? Here, there's the big question mark. Does the AI app cover this? And then when I saw the keynote this morning, I was like, okay, I don't want to come here today and present you yesterday's news. So I actually looked into the Odoo 19 way, and we tried it in the last weeks. We couldn't get it to work. Today, I saw a few things that were really good hints. So we tried it again to update the slides here for you. And I'm going to show a way that how we do it in Odoo 17 and 18 as well. So let's have a quick look at the Odoo 19 part. So we would need an added property, right? So we get the part where we can get a summary from the AI with a clear recommendation. In this part, we define a prompt. We want to hand in stuff. We probably want to hand in the attachments. And we want to hand in the job description. So in the Odoo job description, we can just store our internal evaluation criteria. And then we don't have to update this for every single job. It will just always pull the job description for the job we have, right? And that's how it works for all your jobs without updating the prompt. I think it's a lot more practical. And you can still give it, the prompt is quite long that we use here. If you sign up for the aftercare email, you will get all the prompts as well. The prompt is very long, but we want to obviously use the same prompt for every job. And now you want to see the result. And since we're going over this properties way, we get a funny recommendation here. That is clear rejection, horrible candidate, shouldn't work with them. And we can see this result right in the Odoo interface in the application app. Now, this seems very beautiful, and I'm pretty sure this is going to work very soon in Odoo 19, but we couldn't make it work today. The main reason is we couldn't get the Odoo AI app to actually attach the attachments from the record. All the context is there, even a lot of things that I don't ever think an AI wants to know, but we couldn't get it to hand over the attachments. If you inject attachments like me in a silly way, like a variable, you're going to get the technical name of the attachment, not the attachment itself. So this was the first challenge that we had here. And the second part is the way we usually do it. We adjust the temperature, the max tokens, and so on. So we can fine-tune the model a little bit for the use case, which dramatically improves the outcomes. in every place in Odoo, in the agents and so on, so everywhere in Odoo 19 you can do this. We haven't found the place where you can do this for properties. It probably exists, but we just couldn't find it yet. Yeah, so this, I think both of them Odoo is going to solve very quickly, and the second one probably I'm just going to have to do my homework, but you know, we did it in half an hour after the keynote to do this update. So how did we actually do it before? We open sourced an Odoo AI automated actions or automation rule app. It's quite some time ago. It has a few hundred downloads on the marketplace. It's free, and it allows you to do effectively the same things. You create an automation rule or a server action. You select the generative AI one, and then you can select from many different models that you can also configure on temperature, on max tokens. It's very easy, actually. You can include reports, so you can print anything that Odoo Standard can print on this model. And you can include all the attachments. You can include mails, chatter, everything. And you can decide where it goes into a field, into the chatter, what you want to update. And then you can just inject a prompt template like everywhere else and do effectively the same thing. And in the end, in this case, we put it in the chatter to not clutter all other fields. And you get the same recommendation with all the structure, how all of this works. So pretty straightforward, open source. You can just take that home in any case. The one thing I do want to mention shortly is this works for a lot of other use cases. So we don't only do this for recruiting, we do this for literally everything. The app also includes a few use cases out of the box. If you want to know some prompts and so on, just reach out. We're just trying to really understand this topic as much as possible to be able to help our clients do these small automations that make a big day-to-day difference. Yeah, in the end, for the recruiting use case, we could save a lot of time, 6 hours. We could save on the screening time. We can reduce the answer time a lot from roughly 4 working days with ourselves and the companies we did this with, and to 1 day. So next day you always have an answer to your application. And it really enabled the recruiters to focus more on sourcing and interviews, which I think is, to be honest, the biggest advantage in the end. All right, thank you so much. Again, if you want the slides, it's that one. If you want to ask a question, it's here. Let's go. Hi.
Nice presentation, yeah.
Thank you. If you come on behind the line, you're on the video, I think.
Oh, this one, like this? Yes. Nice. Okay, so the first question is, I think from the numbers and from the logic, it was easy to convince clients or people that this would reduce time.
Yeah.
But how easy or difficult was it to convince them that it was the right choice, that the AI wouldn't just filter out people, that they would be a good potential, like they would not depend on people as much, they would depend on AI? Was it difficult? How?
So the way we do it with all these small AI automations is we just set them up on a staging environment, and we just tell the client, well, just apply it over all your job applications maybe that you had in the past where you still keep the data around. Same as in all the other processes, just try it out on staging, see the results, and you're going to see that like the people you hired, they had like a 97% confidence as well on the screening. So that gives a lot of confidence, but really you have to try it out on a staging environment. You have to set it up, you have to test it, and you have to fine tune it a little bit, and then the clients are very easy to convince if they can see it, right? The big problem with AI is it always feels like this big, weird thing that people don't fully understand, but if you can touch it and see it, I think that's the easiest way, so do a prototype.
Yeah. How do you handle the data security with AI in recruitment?
It depends a little bit. First of all, we use AI providers where we can very granularly manage, right, how the data is used. So for example, with Gemini and ChatGPT, you have a German AI zone. They don't save any of your data, it's just in transit, and then we just add it to the data protection statement from the company, right? You have to declare that you're using this. And to be honest, I think that's it. It's really more of the compliance part that we use this data and process it, but it can be assumed in an application process very easily. And there's not really big secrets in here, I think. Yeah. I mean, you are reliant on the AI companies to not lie to you and not use the data, but if you use the paid API, I've never heard of a single incident where that was actually the case, so it should be easy.
what methods are you using to calibrate AI scoring so that recruiters trust in the systems based on measurable reliability rather than just perceived accuracy?
So first of all, we really explain people also how AI works and how you can adjust the temperatures, all the different parameters, because how you fine-tune your AI makes quite a big difference on how good the results are. Right, this application use case here, it needs a little bit of creativity because we also want to have strange profiles that stand out in some way to be flagged as like, hey, maybe this guy is a bit odd against the profile, but maybe it's really interesting. It's just, a little bit different fit to the role. So you need a bit of creativity, and so you need to, in the fine-tuning of the AI, you need to adjust the parameters and the temperature to allow the AI to be a bit more creative. For example, on the accounting side, you want to have like zero creativity, right? And you can just fine-tune the parameters. They have different names depending on the AI providers. But it's always the same, basically, whatever provider you use.
Okay, I think you partially answered my next question. Does AI show any uncertainty? Like, for example, I'm not sure if this is a good CV, and how recruiters.
So what you always want is you basically want to give the AI 3 options: make a very clear yes decision, make a very clear no decision, or say, I have no idea, this makes 0 sense, right? So I think that's really important to have that third option. But then if you fine-tune your prompt a little bit, it's going to be very, very little of the third option. But you always want to tell the AI, if you really like, this makes no sense to you, please just don't answer, just say this doesn't make any sense. Please check it manually. But for this use case, for example, it nearly never happens. I mean, it would then just be like 0%, he applied to the wrong job. Okay. That's still a clear no, right? So for other use cases, that's a lot more difficult, I would say.
Okay, a question about how many hours of development it took you to create this use case?
This use case, we're using this app that we use for a lot of the different use cases that took a few weeks to develop because we connect 4 different API, like AI providers, which makes it take more time. But effectively, I think it's technically very simple, and it's just about finding the right prompts. And if you use AI to help you write good prompts, then you're a lot faster. So for this use case, you can set it up in half an hour, right? You install an app, copy a prompt, you're done basically. But the coding time is small, very small.
Yeah. I have a question. Can you expand on the scoring system? How does it work? How do you define it?
This is really up to you, right? We cannot define scoring rules for other companies. But for example, in our case, we explain the AI to give points for certain characteristics. It's different on every job. We save this on the job profile on Odoo. We have a field where we save this internal evaluation guide. And we actually, in the beginning, we thought, we have to completely revamp this. And then we just gave the AI the normal evaluation guides we use. And it just worked. So we told all our clients, if you already have a list of things you check, just use the same. It works very well. And then you basically let it calculate points for different categories, and you do a percentage in the end. It's it's just prompt based. There's no magic really.
Do you have any experience with integrating matching tools?
Matching tools?
Yeah, I think.
What's a matching tool?
I'm not sure what the question meant, but I would imagine like maybe tools to read the CV and match it. I know with a certain rule you have, maybe. I'm not sure. So what we actually implemented is that if people have a very bad score on this exact test, we would look at all the open jobs and see if there's a different job where the profile could fit better. And then just suggest this. So the recruiter sees, it's a 30% fit for this job, so probably it's a no. But we have the other position that's open, that's maybe more junior, where the AI said, you have a better fit. So in that case, that's also like how we do it if we have to sort applications into different jobs. It's the same approach. A question about why not open source it?
It is open source and free on the marketplace.
Via OCA, I'm not sure what is OCA.
Odoo Community Association. To be honest, we just thought when we put it free online, it's fair enough. We would give it to the OCA if they wanted, but took 5 minutes to upload on the Odoo marketplace. You don't have to talk to anyone. And I think about 450 people downloaded it so far, so why not?
And how big is the pool you tested this on?
There must be over 10,000 applications that ran through this easily. I don't know on the clients. I don't usually check their production systems. But there's multiple organizations with thousands of applications month that use this
Okay.
setup.
Those were the questions.
Nice. If there's any other
thank you.
question, I'm just going to be outside if you want to chat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.